Championship Wrestling, bringing you great wrestling action, sanctioned by the NWA, National Wrestling Alliance.
Allied Powers. Like, what?
They probably knew.
This is bothering you in 2016?
Dude, you don't even know. But anyway.
So, NWA Championship Wrestling, October 4th, 1986. This was, as you noted, a half-hour show. Do you remember back when Vince Russo was doing TNA and he miscounted the number of shows up to a pay-per-view, and so they literally did 2 scripts worth of shows in one 2-hour show?
Dude, it wasn't even that. It was a Bound for Glory series, and they were like 30 shows off or something.
Whatever.
But yes.
This felt like that. This felt like 2 shows crammed into 30 minutes. So the Andersons cut a promo, said they had threatened all the baby faces and lived up to their word and made them pay. Now they were threatening to take the world titles from the Rock and Roll Express. Magnum TA versus Vernon Deaton. Magnum won in 4 seconds with the belly-to-belly.
Yeah, David Crockett was so excited about this belly-to-belly.
I wanted David Crockett to have just called that ROH show I watched.
You know, I keep telling people, we need a David Crockett.
That ROH show badly needed David Crockett.
I love this match where there's like 2 moves, and then Magnum takes him to the ropes, and he's clearly calling the spot. Watch the belly-to-belly.
You couldn't have handled this.
Because maybe this guy wasn't sure what was going to happen when Magnum whipped him into the ropes.
Call it in the ring, brother.
After the 2 moves.
I'll see you out there.
Yeah, buddy, we'll call it in the ring. When it's time, I'll hit that belly-to-belly.
When it's time.
When it's time. He did 2 moves and then just said, it's time.
Bad news, son.
It's time
It's
right
time.
now.
Paul Jones got a promo saying he knew Manny Fernandez would accept his bounty. And he bragged about bringing Rick Rude into the territory.
Oh, man. Lots happened since we last watched this show.
Baron growled for a while and said he was going to take the TV title from Dusty Rhodes.
Hope Rude does better than he did in DX in 97.
We'll talk about that in Retro Raw, but what the hell was up with that? Tony Schiavone interviewed Jimmy Valiant. Here's the entire promo.
Let's talk about his beard first.
All right.
Jimmy Valiant has a very, 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 very full beard.
Yes.
And he decided one day, I'm going to trim it. And so he shaved his cheeks,
Yes.
not bald.
Right.
Like there was a little bit of stubble
he trimmed
there.
his cheeks.
And then where his jaw begins, it just goes straight down for about 2 feet. And then I think he used either a hair straightener or a crimper on it.
It was a pretty beard.
It was.
I don't know if a beard can be pretty.
I don't know if I'd say pretty. It was a presentation.
It was work went into this.
That's undoubtedly true.
Yes. So his promo was, he could say mean things about Paul Jones and Baron Von Raschke and all those guys. He could run his mouth, but he wasn't going to do that. He was going to tell a story. And the story was, one day he was wrestling, and he looked up at way up in the rafters, way up in the cheap seats, and he saw Dolly Parton.
I think he said Dolly Parton.
Probably. And he couldn't believe that a great star like Dolly Parton had such a horrible seat. So he went up there to get her, to bring her down closer so she could have a better seat. But when he got there, it wasn't Dolly Parton. It was 2 bald-headed men sitting next to each other.
2 bald-headed geeks.
Well, that's my point. One of my points. He didn't say bald-headed geeks.
Oh, just bald-headed men?
Bald-headed men sitting each other.
I like the story.
And then he left. That was the punchline. Because bald men's heads look like big boobs, and Dolly Parton has big boobs, and that was his joke.
For those of you wondering, I had to explain the joke to Vinny.
No, you didn't explain
he
it.
Sat there gobsmacked looking at the screen. And I just had
got
to say,
it. I just couldn't believe they put him on the TV
big
to say
boobs.
this.
Vinny.
Yes.
Let me talk about the real story of this promo and Ric Flair's promo. It's the same
There's
story.
more?
Yeah, there is.
All right.
In both cases, the wrestlers made it clear that if you were a star, you had a shit ton of money, you drove a big car, you had fancy clothes, and you lived in a giant house.
When did Jimmy Valiant say any of that?
He didn't say any of that, but he said that Dolly Parton was a star. So what was she doing sitting in the cheap seats?
I see.
This was mind-blowing to him that a star would be sitting in the cheap seats.
I see.
What's happened in this business?
Well,
I don't want to see a bunch of poor people fucking grappling.
and you're seeing poor losers who, through the charity of the McMahons, are given an opportunity to wrestle on TV.
I'm sick of it.
To scrape by paycheck to paycheck and barely get by, and they're lucky they're not on the street. Raging Bull pinned Mike Simani with a flying burrito in seconds.
Dude, nobody even seconds. He did holds first. That's what I couldn't believe.
It was less than a minute.
It felt like 5 minutes as I watched him do a hold on Mike Simani on a 30-minute show that I knew was 30 minutes.
Bill Dundee and Buddy Landel cut a promo. So we mentioned the first time Dundee showed up on the show. We had to look it up, and he was, I want to say, born in Scotland, raised in Australia, and had been working in Memphis for a long time. And thus his accent was a mix of all three of these places. Well, the point of this promo was the #1 movie in America is Crocodile Dundee. And so he cranked up the Aussie in his accent.
You know what's amazing when he mentioned that? It suddenly struck me. I was thinking, is that why he's Bill Dundee? But then I realized,
No.
of course not.
He's been Bill Dundee for years.
What a fucking weird coincidence.
I think it's a very common Australian name.
I guess that must be it.
I think, said the American who's never been to Australia. Oh, let's see. Landell talked about needing a wheelbarrow to handle all his fan mail. Tim Horner versus Randy Mulkey.
Hey, if you haven't seen Crocodile Dundee, let me read this synopsis here, utilizing a Google search from the internet. Have you seen this movie?
When it came out.
All right, tell me if this makes you want to see it again. A New York reporter heads to Australia to interview the living legend Mike Dundee. When she finally locates him, she is so taken with him that she brings him back with her to New York. In New York, Mike Dundee is amazed by the wonders of the city and the interesting people there.
That's the whole synopsis.
That's it.
I guess it's not inaccurate.
That sounds like the most boring fucking movie I've ever heard of.
It's technically true. It's better than it sounds.
Wow.
Plus, you get Linda Kozlowski in a thong, so that's cool.
Oh.
Yeah.
How do you spell that?
Tim Horner versus Randy Mulkey. This match was awful. I like when Horner goes for a cradle and actually pull the Mulkey on top of him. And by the end of this, the Mulkey sucked, but at least he sucked and was funny. I wasn't certain the Mulkey wasn't the better worker in this match. Horner hits a power slam and then picked him up to hit an O'Connor roll for the win. This was terrible.
It was actually a pretty nice power slam, and I thought, that's a cool finish.
Yeah.
Then he lifted him up and did a...
I have hit you with a
Roll
devastating power move, and you're down, and your back's on the mat. Now I shall pick you up to hit a cradle.
Well, that's Linda Kozlowski there in a thong.
Did I get her name right?
That I can confirm.
Yeah.
Well, Google helped me
Okay.
quickly.
Why are you mad at me?
I'm not mad at you. I'm just making a point.
I see. Should I keep going, or you want to enjoy that for a while?
I'm just paying attention.
All right. Shivani interviewed Robert Gibson alone, which is always terrible news. I have no idea what he said.
He just mumbled. Where the hell was Ricky? On tour?
I have made this. I have made this comparison before. I can't call it a joke because it's true. Robert Gibson must be where they got the idea for Boomhauer from King of the Hill, because they speak exactly the same. Only Boomhauer is supposed to be a joke. Gibson's supposed to be a star. So he leaves, and in steps Tim Horner, who is better in that I could understand what he was saying, but this was bad.
It was the most generic babyface promo of all time.
And his delivery was very staccato and the same rhythm throughout. This is a great company, and I am happy to be here, and I am happy to be with all these fans, and it's great to be here.
I got breaking news. For those of you following the Overweight Classic.
Here live from the Overweight Classic weigh-ins. The Undertaker, who promised us that he would make the weight for this competition, weighed in at 299 pounds. Therefore, he does not meet the requirements to face the Beer City Bruiser. He will be replaced by the first alternate, Vader.
Wow.
Beer City Bruiser versus Vader. Round 1.
Holy
Wow.
shit. I can't believe The Undertaker didn't make weight. Now that I think about it, he did always weigh in at 299. That fucker couldn't eat one cheeseburger to put him over the limit.
He's never been the same since the streak ended.
What a disappointment. Well, there you go, everybody.
But it sets up Taker versus Bruiser down the line.
That is true. Maybe Taker can...
He can step in and say, Bruiser, you never beat me. You may have won this Overweight Classic, but you never beat the dead man.
Can't believe how over this Overweight Classic is.
Everyone loves big guys.
I'm talking to the participants tweeting about it.
Well, that's actually a good point. Ole and Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard versus Don Kernodle and Bill Tabb and Charles Freeman. Where to begin with Charles Freeman?
Oh, this guy.
Yes.
Every now and then, some new fucker shows up to just win the jobber trophy. This giant lug in a gray singlet.
Gray. Stop. Let's focus on this for a minute.
Oh, now you care about what people wear.
Yes.
I rant about it and you sit there bored until you see this guy.
Yes. What were we talking about before?
The Ole and Arn.
No, this is much more interesting. Hey, you know what? Ole chose to get stars in his trunks and stripes on his boots. And I don't know why, but it doesn't look terrible. Charles Freeman took a look at himself in the mirror and said, I am egg-shaped.
Is that how this conversation began?
How to decorate this Easter egg for the Mat Wars? I'm going to go all gray. And he went out and he bought a singlet and tights that are gray from ankle to strap. No knee pads.
No knee pads, but a fucking elbow pad.
One elbow pad. Wrestling boots. He at least had boots. And he steps in the ring to face 3 of the 4 horsemen.
I remember when I was wrestling and I was bulking up and doing a lot of squats and deadlifts, and I had huge fucking thighs. But I also wore knee pads and shin pads and boots. And Buddy was always like, why do you wear all that shit? You should be showing off your legs. And it was like, I'm wearing all this shit because I don't want to have bad knees. Which, by the way, in all my years of gymnastics and pro wrestling, I don't have bad knees. So I got the last laugh. Now, the reason you don't wear elbow pads is because, especially if you have skinny arms, your goddamn arms look even skinnier. This atrocious physical specimen with an egg-shaped body and toothpicks for arms and legs is out there with big-ass elbow pads on, I guess to protect him from these horrific bumps that he was taking. Now, keep in mind, no knee pads. Elbow pads and no knee pads.
By the way, sometimes if you're wrestling, you will in fact fall on your knees. Quite often, in fact. If you were taking bumps properly, you don't fall on your elbows.
Oh, God, no. No, you never hit your elbows.
No.
Unless you suck.
Yes.
Which answers our question here.
So I'm watching him here.
It is true this guy never fell to his knees because he only fell to his back.
Badly. He was not first day of wrestling school bad, but he was like third day of wrestling school bad.
That's even worse. First day you don't know anything. Third day you know just enough to be really bad.
Yes. So they pinned him with a gourd buster. And the move itself didn't look any different than any other gourd buster I've ever seen. But he hits the mat and he stops moving. He's
killed.
Deceased. He's passed on.
I loved it because they're beating on him for about 2 minutes. And it's like, there's no way they're giving this guy a hot tag. They can't. And they didn't.
No.
So I was right.
Dusty Rhodes came out for a promo. He was interrupted, but he was interrupted by Shaska Watley. Although at first I thought it was a fan.
I did too. I thought he was getting trolled on Twitter.
Why is Dusty yelling at this fan? But Dusty says, I'm not a sucker, you're a sucker, and he calls out Paul Jones in the army. Then he leaves, and Paul Jones and his army are in the ring. Shaska Watley and Baron Von Raschke versus Bill Mulkey and Lee Peak. Bill Mulkey and Lee Peak were slightly better than Charles Freeman, but still terrible.
I love that we had 2 Mulkeys on this show. And instead of tagging together, one did a singles match, and the other worked with a different partner.
It's been that way for months. And there's like one time they actually did a tag match together, and I marked out.
I mean, the only thing I can figure is the Mulkeys determined that, my God, we fucking suck as a team. So maybe we could take turns going singles, and then the other one will get a partner, and maybe we'll see success. Suffice to say, they saw no success.
No. Shaska pinned Peak with a superplex. Jim Cornette cut a promo, said the Road Warriors were now broke and destroyed. It was all due to the Midnight Express.
A hell of a promo.
He ran down the rock and rolls and promised the Midnights would get the titles back. This led to Midnight Express versus Keith Patterson and Randy Barber. An unremarkable squash, I wrote. Express won with the rocket launcher.
It was worth it just to hear Cornette do so many one-liners that David Crockett finally had to step all over him to call the finish. Because he was just going to keep going.
I'm sure he would have. Ric Flair did a promo. This is the one you were talking about. The point of this promo was every single, half of the stars you see in the show are rich and famous and badass men. Talked about how great the Midnight Express were. As much as he didn't like him, how tough Dusty Rhodes and Magnum TA and Ronnie Garvin and Wahoo McDaniel and the Rock and Roll Express, what great athletes they were, what great stars they were. Everyone who works here is a huge star with fancy houses and the best clothes. He listed his upcoming dates. That was really that.
Except the jobbers.
Well,
They're poor.
That's why I specified half the crew.
Yeah.
Magnum TA did a promo. He ran down Jimmy Garvin. Ron Garvin versus, I believe it was Jimmy Royal. One with a punch in 15 seconds. And then Jimmy Garvin did a promo saying Magnum TA was a sick individual and accused him of putting his hands on Precious, and the show ended.
It's a hell of a promo.
He's a great promo.
I'll say it again. This guy can talk.
Yeah.
He couldn't work, but he could talk.
I don't know if we're still going to be watching this show for it's like 4 or 5 years, but when we get the Michael Hayes Jimmy Garvin tag team, you're talking about two guys who complement each other's that's the wrong term. They have the same strengths and weaknesses. They were very average in the ring and great on the mic.
Yeah.
I hope they never wrestle. Just do promos.
You know what? The moral of the story is, if you can only work, sometimes you're in deep trouble. But if you can only talk, as long as you're good at it, you're all right.
Yeah.
There you go.
So that was that show.
At the one and only. Woo!
Didn't make sense to me. Hell of an opener, though.
That opener was, wow. NWA Championship Wrestling, starting with October 11th, 1986. The day after I turned 11, actually.
Wow.
Yeah. So we have missed shows here and there because of WWE pay-per-views. And watching this, I felt like I had missed a month of shows. A lot happened. They recapped a promo where Dick Murdoch came out in a white wig and sunglasses and a Rolex and said this and a strut was all you needed to be Ric Flair. He said he had...
That's incorrect, by the way.
Indeed. Ask Buddy Landell. He said he had money in Rolexes too, but he wore blue jeans and tennis shoes and drove a truck because he wanted to. And Flair came out to confront him, and at this point the credits rolled.
You see, everybody, in 1986, unlike these geeks today, even though Dick Murdoch is a common man, he's rich.
He is successful and rich.
Because he is a professional wrestler in the biggest organization in the world.
He was sure to point out he had all the money in the world, had plenty of Rolexes.
He dresses like a pauper, and he drives a pickup truck because he likes to. But he's not poor.
No.
He's not in poverty. Why is it so hard to create a persona for yourself as someone who has money because you're a famous professional wrestler? Crying out loud. Remember when Shawn Michaels was poor?
Yeah. After being a main event guy for 2 decades.
Remember the Big Show? Think about this. Not only was the storyline that the Big Show had no money, the storyline was he invested in a strip mall that went broke.
Yes.
So he's poor and an idiot.
Yes.
A bad businessman and poor. After years in this business, he debuted in 1996 and won the world championship in his first match. And he's been a main event superstar at that point for 15 years. But now he's in poverty because he invested his money in a strip mall that went out of business. How can you get behind these people?
I remember that angle in the promo. I believe I described that promo as the Stephanie's promo was like the biggest pile of bullshit I'd ever heard. And it still is.
And then Shawn was poor, and one day they just dropped it.
Just stop talking
Because
about
they
it.
realized, wait, Shawn Michaels has no money.
Well, now we realize all these people are poor. They are all lucky to have jobs at the charity of the McMahons.
Yeah.
That's the
The
storyline.
Cruiserweight champion couldn't afford an N64.
Yeah.
He had an unemployed Brian Kendrick buy it for him or something.
Well, even any time anyone gets in trouble with Steph, she just threatens to fire them and they shut right up.
That's right.
Because they're desperate for work and they have no other talent or skills. So back in 1986, the announcers broke the news, and apparently it was broken for the first time here, that Manny Fernandez had turned on Jimmy Valiant and taken Paul Jones's money.
Which is so great because, as we'll later see,
We'll get to it.
he physically took his money.
Yes.
It wasn't even a saying.
No, quite literally.
Yes.
Jim Cornette joined them to take shots at Robert Gibson for being injured. Hope Gibson came back soon so they could get the tag titles back. Midnight Express versus Paul Garner and Art Pritz.
I had a realization here. Another comparison to 2016 wrestling. So, this Tuesday on SmackDown, James Ellsworth is getting a shot at the world title against AJ Styles.
Mm-hmm.
James Ellsworth is the 2016 Jobber of the Year.
Sure.
He faced Braun Strowman. He's made a couple of other appearances. Thing is, James Ellsworth has been wrestling forever. He is a self-aware jobber.
Yeah.
Very different from 1986.
Oh, yeah.
There's no way that Paul Garner and Art Pritz were self-aware. They were lost, swimming in a pool of cluelessness. They had no idea what was going on. Art Pritz, he didn't even know what planet he was on.
I like when Bob Eaton takes one of them. And we've seen him before where he takes the guy out of the ring and holds him so Cornette can hit a shot. They take it to another level here. Bobby takes him over to the announce desk. He holds the guy in a headlock, and Cornette reaches over and flicks the dude's nose. And the guy sells it like he's been punched in the nose by Mike Tyson. And Bobby Eaton is so comfortable and so relaxed and so overjoyed by all this, he forgets he's in a match. And he puts his elbow on Crockett's shoulder, is pointing at the guy and laughing. And then somebody points in, you have a match to go, dude. And he goes, oh, yeah, I forgot. And throws the guy in the ring. He was so relaxed.
There's a term in wrestling everyone's well aware of called carry. When you carry your opponent. It literally, all the years I've been in wrestling, I didn't even understand what that meant till I watched this match.
Sure.
They literally had to carry these guys like they were babies. Because they were hopeless.
The Midnight Express won with the rocket launcher. Dusty Rhodes came out for one of his most amazing promos of all time, and I'm aware of the ground that covers. He did refer to himself as Stardust in here at some point, but he explained that he had recently spent some time in the Central States territory. He had a clip to show everybody from Kansas City, Kansas. It was Sam Houston wrestling Buddy Landel, and then doing this match when Bill Dundee tries to interfere, and Houston fights both of them off. But then who should hit the ring but the Central States champion Bulldog Bob Brown? And this is all footage shot from a house show. And you can see it's a suited man. And Dusty is sure to point out the man with the suit and the flat top is Bulldog Bob Brown. He's going after Sam Houston. I've known Sam Houston since he broke in. I couldn't stand by and watch this. I hit the ring myself. And Dusty hits this ring in this one light building. They leave the ring. They are immediately obscured by fans and darkness. And Dusty describing what's happening while sarcastically taking shots at Central States production. This is great camera work. Such a great crew they have out there in Central States. I pile ride this man, he said. You'll have to trust me. It's not an exact quote. But we sure as hell couldn't see it. We saw the backs of fans' heads. They go back to the building, the studio. Dusty announces this is his birthday. The fans sang the worst rendition of Happy Birthday you've ever heard.
It was so bad I don't even remember this.
Dusty was moved. He thanked the fans, talked about how wonderful all the people were. Now keep in mind, he had just been wrestling in Kansas and this was taped in Atlanta. He says, all you fans from Boulder, Colorado to Albuquerque, New Mexico. You're so wonderful to me. And the four horsemen, Flair, Dillon, Blanchard, Anderson, you're all in trouble. And he left.
I like when he began kissing up to the fans. He talked about how we're all God's children.
Yes.
It's like he was running for office.
It was insane.
Sam Houston. I remember when we first started watching these shows like 2 years ago and we saw Sam Houston, and it was like, God, this guy is just hideous. Sam Houston is horrible. And then people were commenting and saying, Brian, you got to ask Dave about Sam Houston. He thought Sam Houston was great. Well, he was right, because Sam Houston improved.
Yes.
Sam Houston has improved so much in 2 years, it's not even funny. He's like a totally different guy. He was great in the short clips we saw here.
J.J. Dillon and Tully Blanchard came out for a promo. Dillon ran it for like a minute, and I had no idea what his point was. Then they showed the finale of what happened after Flair confronted Murdoch last week. So Flair was upset that Murdoch was making fun of him for having blonde hair and a Rolex. He says, Dick Murdoch, I am going to stretch your country butt because someone needs to knock you out of your Reeboks. He removed his jacket and entered the ring. Murdoch had no problem with this, tore off his t-shirt, hit the ring. They had a minute of a brawl, and in this 1 minute brawl, Dick Murdoch was on offense for 59 seconds. And he was about to hit the brainbuster and kill this man when the Horsemen attacked and laid him out, and about 5 guys ran out to make the save. They went back to the studio.
Let's talk about what really happened here. The heels were so awesome in explaining that the babyfaces had attacked them from behind.
Yeah, that's what I was going to get to.
With an unfair advantage.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because they go back.
These guys were great.
Tully explains, look at all these guys, they're attacking us from behind like cowards because the only way they can fight us.
Amazing hypocrisy.
It is outstanding.
That they pulled off so well, blaming everybody but themselves and being complete hypocrites. That's what's missing in this business. Hypocrites.
Ivan Koloff came out for a promo.
He also called them the Jayhawkers.
He did.
I did some investigation here. So it appears that Jayhawks and Jayhawkers technically interchangeable.
Okay.
Jayhawkers is a term that came to prominence just before the Civil War in Bleeding, Kansas, or was adopted by militant bands affiliated with the Free State cause. These bands were known as Jayhawkers, guerrilla fighters who often clashed with pro-slavery groups from Missouri, known at the time as the Border Ruffians.
Oh, that's a better name.
After the Civil War, the word Jayhawker became synonymous with the people of Kansas. Today, a modified version of the term Jayhawk is used as a nickname for a native-born Kansan, but more typically for a student fan or alumnus of the University of Kansas. So basically, everybody calling them Jayhawkers was, I guess, using the correct term. Jayhawks ended up being a shortened term.
Somebody needs to bring back Border Ruffians.
I'm surprised no one's used it.
Ivan Koloff came out for a promo, revealed that he and Crusher Khrushchev had won the U.S. Tag Title Tournament. He had that now paired with Nephew Nikita's U.S. Singles title. He dared any team to try to come take their tag belts and said the world titles were next in their sights. Brad Armstrong versus Randy Barber. Here is everything I wrote about this match. There were a lot of headlocks. Armstrong won with a side Russian leg sweep. What a match, David Crockett said.
I wrote down Brad wins. Nothing more to add.
Ronnie Garvin came out with the Mid-Atlantic Championship, which I can't believe is still around.
I can't believe there's anybody in this program that doesn't have a title at this point.
So there is still, even though they've unified the U.S. title and national titles, there is still the TV belt and the Mid-Atlantic belt and the world title and, of course, and the U.S. title, yeah. And a cruiserweight title that's defended about once a year. Anyway, Garvin lied, said this was a prestigious title, and vowed to win the world championship in 1986.
This was really weird because Garvin was telling the fans, not that you could actually do this, but he says, I will win the title before 1986 is over, and you fans, you can bet on it. If you've got money, bet that I will be champion before the end of 1986. And then as he's leaving, he says, 1986, not 1990, right now.
Yes.
And I was like, you didn't. You did not win this belt in 1986.
No.
All your damn fans lost their asses betting on you now. Very weird thing for a babyface to promise something and not deliver.
It was not a good promo, and his promos usually aren't good. He was mumbling, he was confused. Maybe he meant 1987.
It is possible. In the old days, if you were a babyface and you said that you promised, or if you said, I swear to God, that was always going to happen. They never had a babyface promise or swear to God and not have it happen. So Ronnie screwed up here. Terrible promo.
Tim Horner versus Bill Tabb. Hell of a crew on this show. For a 30-minute show, by the way. Bill Tabb got hit with an elbow and sold it by sitting down. He tried a press slam. Horner escaped, hit an O'Connor roll for the win.
I literally wrote nothing for this match. I did not have any notes. I wrote Tim Horner versus Bill Tabb, and the very next line is Ravishing Rick Rude versus Lee P.
Well, let's move on to that one then. Let's talk about Rick Rude's music.
It's amazing. It appeared to be a dub job.
I suspect this was dubbed in, but it's awesome because it's a woman's voice saying like, "You're so ravishing. Where did you come from?" And then in kicks the Sade ripoff music straight out of every sleazy 1980s porno ever. Fantastic. Rick Rude comes in here. He very quickly wins with the Rude Awakening.
We need to add, he came in with Paul Jones.
Fact.
It's so amazing because when you look at Paul Jones through 2016 eyes, it's like, look at this total geek. He's a geek that is in charge of a faction of geeks.
Yes. Who's feuding with a geek.
And then you see that they put Rick Rude in there and you realize they took him seriously. These guys are all to be taken seriously.
Yes.
They were goofy heels, but they were to be taken seriously.
Yes.
It's mind-blowing.
Yes, Rick Rude with this crew is pretty amazing.
And yes, the DDT was the original Rude Awakening here.
At this point in the show, they were going so quickly, I was 4 segments behind, moving back and forth in my notes trying to complete things. So they go to break. When they come back, Paul Jones and Rude are cutting a promo. Didn't you just say that watching Paul Jones with 2016 eyes, I think he's awful or he sucks or something?
He's horribly awesome, is how I've described him today.
I think here he was awesomely horrible. He starts to cut this promo. He gets as far as saying Jimmy Valiant should leave the wrestling world. Then he stops and interrupts himself and says, "And I want to talk about," and he changes the subject entirely. And the subject is about how he does not care if his men love him as long as they love money. But they love him. I'm pretty sure he said Manny Fernandez slobbers over him.
He did. Slobbers. You know what this reminded me of? On this show, where in the middle of the show, I will say, "Can I say something about this?" And you'll say, "That's what we're here for."
Yeah.
That's what Paul Jones did here.
He did.
They're interviewing him. They're giving him time to speak. Yeah. And he suddenly stopped them and said, "I got to say something." Which he then did.
Yeah. He just veered off course. He caught himself off guard what he was going to talk about. So then Rude cuts a promo. And I realize this is breaking news, but some guys have star power and some guys don't, and Rick Rude did.
God, he was a great promo.
Oh.
He wasn't, I wouldn't call him a great worker yet. He improved dramatically.
Yes, this was 1986. He would get much better. All he did in the match was throw some clubbering elbows and DDT the guy. But just as soon as he talks, and it helps, of course, he looks the way he does, he explains, "You do not need to adjust the controls on your television set. It's just my abs bulging off the screen." Now, what do you think was more impressive here, his abs or his mustache?
It's a good question. I couldn't stop looking at both of them.
It's very close. Because calls out all the baby faces on the roster. He says, "Paul Jones offered me a bundle of money to take care of business, and that's all I needed to hear. Because it doesn't matter if it's Dusty Rhodes, if it's Magnum TA, if it's Wahoo McDaniel. The price is right. I'll take care of business." And finally, they showed the clip of what had happened with Manny Fernandez. So the match was booked Manny and Jimmy Valiant versus Shaska Whatley and Baron von Raschke. And Paul Jones had been recruiting Manny for weeks now, saying he had the right price. He's going to make him an offer he couldn't refuse. So before this match can start, Jones makes his move, and he pulls out the big briefcase full of money. The only way this could have been better if it was a giant canvas sack with a dollar sign painted on it. But he lays down a briefcase and opens it. It's a briefcase full of money. Manny Fernandez drops to one knee. He looks at it. He inspects it. Makes sure it's not like a $50 on top and blank paper underneath. All that. No, it's a briefcase full of money. He looks up at Jones. It almost looks like a little insulted. Like you can't believe this man tried to buy him off. And he slams the briefcase shut. And he stands. And then he shakes Paul Jones's hand. Fans are outraged. Valiant is outraged. He grabs Manny and spins him around. Manny whacks him in the head with the briefcase and leaves. And Jones and Shaska and the Baron all put the boots to Jimmy Valiant. And that is that.
Paul Jones was over the moon that Manny had taken the money. And what was amazing about it was, in the middle of the angle, you're waiting for them to do a swerve. You're waiting for example, Manny to throw the briefcase at Paul Jones, but then turn. Or you expect him to take the briefcase, extend his hand, but then beat up Paul Jones. There was no swerve.
No.
He looked at the money, thought about it, shut the briefcase, shook the dude's hand. Other dude spun him around, and he beat his ass.
Yeah.
Because he'd taken the money.
He had taken the money.
There was no swerve. There was no bullshit. There was no twist. It just happened. I loved it.
It was great. Simplicity is so great. They go back to the studio. Now Manny Fernandez has joined Jones and Rude. And he says part of his decision was that he is tired of carrying losers. That's why I took the money. And as they're making their exit, Paul Jones screams, "If the money's big enough, the facts don't count."
Yeah.
Paul Jones ready to run for president in 2016. Tully Blanchard versus Tony Zane.
This was weird.
This is where it's way behind in my notes and frantically trying to keep up. Dillon hit Zane with an atomic drop. Yes, J.J. Dillon hit Tony Zane with an atomic drop.
And what an atomic drop.
He hits this atomic drop, which I'm guessing at least a quarter of the people listening to this could do better, maybe a lot more. And the announcers are saying, well, he was a great wrestler back in the day. Watching this atomic drop, that day must have been a long time ago. And then Tully hit a slingshot suplex and won. And then I wrote, Brad Armstrong and Tim Horner cut a promo calling out heels.
Hideously boring. Hideously.
There's a reason they were Brad Armstrong and Tim Horner.
But Brad Armstrong, the reputation was he was hilarious and a really, really funny guy.
Yes.
But you never saw it.
No, it never appeared on TV. Raging Bull versus Kent Glover.
I love this because Rude's out there with Raging Bull. And he's out there solely to walk around with no shirt on.
Oh, yeah. That is his purpose. In this cast of geeks and fools, Bull and Rude clearly want a whole nother level. Because you look at Rude, you know this is a guy not to fuck with. And Bull's been, if you've been watching the show for a while, he's been a badass. He fought in a war, he's been taking on fights. You don't fuck with him either. The rest of these clowns are just clowns. So Ronnie Garvin comes to the announce desk and says, I know Manny Fernandez personally. There must be something more to this than money. He would never turn his back on his friend just for money. I want to talk to him. So Manny gets the win with the flying burrito. Ronnie gets in his face to confront him. Bull says, get out of my face. And then Rude and Jones jump Garvin from behind and put the boots to him. And at first, Bull is just looking. He's not joining in. He's letting these guys stomp him. But then they hold Garvin up, and Bull gives him one shot. He walks away. And as the heels are all living, Paul Jones returns to the announce desk to gloat more and says, the sky is the limit. Beware! And then he goes totally blank-faced and walks off camera.
He's the best.
He's
number one.
He is the best at being the worst.
This is why he was number one, Paul Jones.
He's so number one, I can't think of anyone close to number two. So we watch the next week. October 18th, 1986.
All right, so this is a very, very newsworthy show because it aired on October 18, 1986, but it was taped on October 12th.
I suspected this.
And 4 days later, Magnum got in his car accident, which ended his career.
Yes.
So apparently when this aired, I guess WTBS put crawlers on the screen whenever Magnum was on screen or whenever anybody was talking about Magnum, noting that it was pre-taped. Because this was a huge news story.
Yeah.
Magnum crashed his car, hit a telephone pole, ended up paralyzed. Half of his body was paralyzed, broke his neck in 2 places, never wrestled again, although he does return to this show here after a while. And nobody didn't know if you were in the area.
Yeah.
So they put all the crawlers on the screen because there's Magnum out there talking about a match at Starrcade, which is never going to happen, and all of this other stuff. So I guess the crawlers must have been... The crawlers were not on the master tape because there were no crawlers here on this show.
No.
You would never know from watching this episode that anything had happened to Magnum a couple days earlier.
They showed Dusty confronting Tully at a house show and quickly being jumped by the Andersons. They announced the first match for Starrcade 86 had been signed.
Crockett was so excited. And the excitement carried all the way into the first match. He couldn't contain his excitement.
Well, he could, because they told us you have to stick around to see what that first match is.
I see. But he was very, very, very excited about it,
Yes.
whatever it might be.
Then Magnum TA joined the show for what I actually thought might be his last promo, and in fact it was. I did not know the pre-tape thing happened, but I knew sometime in October he had his wreck.
I don't think this is his last promo.
Oh, another one.
Because I think this was taped... Because he has one more match.
Okay.
Against, of all people, the Grim Reaper.
Oh, God.
That was actually his last television match. So I think that was taped the day after this show was taped. So he probably did one more promo after he beat the Grim Reaper.
Yes, probably then. Okay. Regardless, he said here he had a match coming up with Jimmy Garvin, but his main priority was still to get Nikita Koloff back in the ring and getting the U.S. title back.
Man.
Life sucks. Ole and Arn Anderson versus Keith Patterson and Werner Deaton. Arn won with a gourd-buster.
Crockett was still so excited.
Tully Blanchard on crutches came out for a promo, and they showed an angle from Greensboro where Dusty and Tully were having a fight.
This was ridiculous.
Let me tell you what happened.
This was ridiculous.
Dusty snaps.
Everybody listening to this right now, Vinny is not making any of this up. You have to imagine this in your head.
Dusty snaps. He goes after Tully Blanchard with a chair. He lays him out, and he attacks Tully's right leg with a chair. And he hit Tully's right leg with a chair over and over again, hitting him repeatedly in the right leg with a chair to the right leg.
This is the least of our problems.
Dylan in the studio is narrating this, saying this proves how vicious and cruel a man Dusty Rhodes can be. He's correct. Then Dusty takes it a step further. He puts Tully in the figure 4 leg lock, grabs the ropes for leverage. And Dylan admits he's grabbing the ropes for leverage, just like Ric Flair does. That makes the move hurt more. Because Dylan is so outraged that Dusty would be so cruel, he is fine admitting that yes, Ric Flair cheats a lot. So men come to break up this figure 4 leg lock. Dusty Rhodes, his legs are occupied because he is putting Tully Blanchard into figure 4. His hands are occupied because he's grabbing the ropes for leverage. So a ref comes over to break up the hold. Dusty releases the ropes with one hand, grabs the ref, throws him out of the ring with one arm from his back, and grabs the ropes again. I'm thinking, okay, silly, but it's the ref. Another ref comes in. Dusty throws him out with one arm from his back as well. Then like an NWA official comes out. He is also gets thrown out. Out come the Midnight Express. Your top heel tag team. And your top heel tag team for the past year. They get treated no better. Dusty casually disposes of them with one arm from his back.
When Dusty Rhodes, from his back, with his legs out of commission and one arm on the ropes, grabbed both of the Midnight Express one at a time, and I can't even say he hurled them. He grabbed them by the wrist, and they took pratfalls between the middle rope to fly outside. I was like, if I had watched this as a child, that would have been the end. I'd have given up on wrestling. This is too fake for me.
Something's not legit here.
Midnight Express? This wasn't Art Pritz and Vernon Deaton.
It wasn't Shaska Watley.
This was the Midnight Express. And those two guys having to go flying for Dusty Rhodes flat on his back with one arm. I was so disgusted and embarrassed to watch this. 20 years later. 30!
Magnum TA joins in. He's holding the leg as Dusty's coming off the top rope. Dylan is going insane. He is begging for a suspension and a $100,000 fine. And at last they go back to the studio where, yes, Tully Blanchard has a huge brace on his left leg.
Things happen.
So JJ explains, and I was behind my notes, so I think this is what's going on. It was going to be Tully and Ole against Dusty in a cage match? Or maybe Dusty, I don't know if it's a tag match or a singles match. But it's supposed to be Tully versus Dusty in a cage match. Now Tully obviously is out of action. Ric Flair's in Japan. The Andersons already booked. So J.J. Dillon himself is going to step into his steel cage to face Dusty Rhodes.
Wow.
What a hero.
I'll say. Thank God he did that atomic drop last week.
That's right.
I know he can do something still.
Do you have anything to say about Ron Garvin versus Grim Reaper?
Just the fact that they spelled it Grimmreeper.
See, at least the first half you could say they're going for a Brothers Grimm thing. There's no excuse for Reaper.
Well, I was thinking that maybe this was a man whose name was Grim Reaper, and he just happened to wear an outfit.
With a skull on it.
Sure. So he wasn't a guy pretending to be the Grim Reaper. His name was G. Reaper.
I'll admit that Grim, the member of the Reaper family, is a thought that hadn't crossed my mind. Garvin won, for those of you keeping score at home.
Remember when Granny kept talking about the Green Raper?
And it wasn't him?
I don't think it was this guy. It might have been.
Somebody else. Wahoo McDaniel pinned Gary Royal with a chop. I don't think they did anything else. I think Wahoo grabbed him, whipped him in, chopped him, and pinned him. Jones, Rude, Fernandez, and Shaska Watley come out for a promo. And they're all running their mouths when Wahoo comes out to confront them. Now, here's something else that is missing in wrestling these days. Everyone now is only worried about their own shit. But here, Manny Fernandez sold out his friend for money. And the entire babyface locker room is pissed off about this. How can you be such a dick? So Wahoo comes out to confront all of them. And Rude kind of steps around the podium to get him from behind, but Wahoo's not stupid. So he sees who's coming and chops him down.
He chopped him so hard.
Welcome to the territory.
Wahoo took one look at this guy, and Rude was a real tough guy.
Yes.
He was a badass.
Yes.
But Wahoo took one look at this pretty boy with all his muscles, and he just chopped him as hard as he could. And Rude took a great bump for it.
On the cement?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was very impressive.
So, he, after chopping Rude, Wahoo grabs Jones by the lapels and was going crazy. But of course, the heels overwhelmed him, triple-teamed him, until Ronnie Garvin and Magnum TA made the save. Ric Flair came out for a promo. He had a match against Magnum TA coming up, then said, of course, he would be defending the World Championship at Starrcade. Though he did not know who that challenger would be, he routed off like a half dozen names. He said they all knew he was the best. Ivan Koloff pinned Mike Samani with a Cobra Clutch. Jim Crockett Jr. came out to announce the first match signed for Starrcade.
Oh, here we go.
Now, I haven't done, obviously we just watched the show and came to do this. I'm going to try and find the original skit here on one of the tube sites that are on the internet these days. Because they had to dub in music, and because of that we lost some of Jimmy Valiant's speech. But they say, we have signed a match for Starrcade. To introduce that match, here's a look at Jimmy Valiant.
No. He said, here's video of how this match came about.
Okay, that's actually better.
And I thought, so there's going to be like some angle that we missed. No.
Well, there is.
Well, I thought like in the ring.
Oh.
I thought maybe it's some Greensboro Coliseum. There was something involving Jimmy.
Let me take it back. There was no angle here. There were some curves, but no angle. So poor Jimmy Valiant's in the hood. And I mean the hood. He's slumped over against a wall, empty beer cans surrounding him. And again, it was hard to hear what he was saying because the dubbed-in music, which was blues, because Jimmy had the blues.
Valiant was rapping to a blues song.
I guess so, yeah. He says, I lost my hair to Paul Jones. I lost Willie Willie, which is what he calls Pez Watley. I lost Willie Willie to Paul Jones. Now I've lost Manny Fernandez to Paul Jones. People, you don't understand. Me and Raging Bull, we were tight. We both fought in Nam.
He says nobody knows how close we were.
Yeah.
We were both in Nam.
We were both in Nam.
I was like, no, you weren't. You're lying.
He says Paul Jones scarred his soul for life. He had nothing left to offer. Thanked the people for supporting the boogeyman. Said he loved them all. He pulled out a harmonica and began to play.
Let's talk about where he pulled his harmonic from. He pulls his pant leg up and he reaches into his boot where apparently he stores his harmonica.
Well, yeah.
He's got no pockets.
No. And he was in street clothes. Shirt, jacket, the whole 9 yards. But boots are for storing harmonicas in, Brian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Harley Davidson jacket.
So he's playing his harmonica, which we can't hear. And the camera, as he's playing, the camera slowly zooms out and pans over to the side. Let's hit pause.
Must we?
Do you recall earlier on this very show, we talked about how wrestlers should be stars, and it's okay if Dick Murdoch likes to drive a pickup truck, but he's got money for a Cadillac or a Benz or whatever. Here in the hood, slowly drives up a station wagon.
Yeah.
With flames on the hood.
Oh, yeah.
What?
Vinny, don't ask questions.
Somebody in 1986 drove the station wagon up to the auto paint shop and said, I need flames on this. And they said, huh?
This surprises you. After everything else you just talked about, the Jimmy Valiant, this is a shocker. He has a station wagon with flames on it.
Well, let's move on. The driver's side door opens. This is all one take, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
I feel the need to point that out.
Oh, yeah. This didn't need 2 takes.
No, it did not.
They nailed it on the first one.
The driver's side door opens, and out steps a woman. She is wearing leopard print spandex halter top and leopard print spandex.
This top was not halting anything.
She's wearing leopard print spandex, and she steps out of the car, swinging her bosom to and fro, is what I wrote. And she approaches Jimmy.
She was not sashaying in a way to shake her ass.
No.
She was sashaying in a way to... How did you describe it?
Swinging her bosom to and fro.
Swinging her bosom to and fro. This is exactly what happened.
So she said her name was Big Mama. She cannot bear to see Boogie Woogie like this. Now, I've said a lot of things about a lot of bad promos over the years. If you're listening to the show and I've ever said anything to criticize your promo skills, I owe you an apology. For I do not know how bad a promo could truly be until Big Mama began to speak.
What are you talking about?
She's constantly looking back and forth from Jimmy to the camera. She can't bear to see Boogie Woogie like this. She can't believe Paul Jones has done this to her man, needs her man at home. Finally, she offers to put her hair on the line against Paul Jones.
She says, I know in my heart that you can beat Paul Jones. And I'm going to put my hair up against Paul Jones's hair.
We didn't talk about her hair, and this is important. She had a big red afro.
Oh, yeah.
The big 1980s perm, no doubt, Aquanet to hell. Yeah, she's putting this hair up against Paul Jones's hair. And this lit a fire in Jimmy Valiant.
His day was turned around.
It was. Because now he has more to lose. And he slowly rises to his feet, and he's looking at the camera, and the more he talks, the more fired up he gets. And he says, I'm going to get back at you, Paul Jones. I'm going to get back at you in the ring, and I'm finally going to make you a bald-headed geek. When he said this, it occurred to me, this angle has been going on for a year.
Yeah.
A whole year.
We don't do new half-ass builds for Starrcade.
No, nor for bald-headed geeks. They got into the station wagon.
No. No. Give me a break, Vinny. His day is turned around, and Big Mama, whose real name, I swear to God, was Felicia Fanning, says, Jimmy, come with me. Now, she dragged his ass to the car.
Yeah.
I have no other way to describe it. She grabbed him, she yanked him to his feet, and Jimmy, he's a shambler. He's a shuffling man.
He was not in a hurry.
Man, she shoved his ass in the car. She was not waiting around. I don't know how she got him in the car without banging his head on the side or putting him through a window. She shoves his ass in the car, walks around, and off they go.
Slowly drove away. And they go back to the studio, and just in case you didn't get it from this little mini movie, the first match signed for Starrcade is Paul Jones versus Jimmy Valiant, with Jones's hair on the line against the hair of Big Mama. Jones formally accepts this challenge.
Before you go any further,
All right?
you guys have to watch this.
You do.
You'll never complain about Raw again. I've never seen anything like this.
It was something else.
And you got to consider that this is their WrestleMania. Starrcade.
Yeah.
This was the first angle to build up the first match for the 1986 Starrcade, the granddaddy of them all. You must watch this. It's astounding.
When you Google Jimmy Valiant Big Mama, the first one is just Jimmy Valiant Wikipedia. There's a YouTube video, Where Are They Now, Big Mama? Images for Jimmy Valiant Big Mama, and then a YouTube video that is simply titled Street Lady. Don't ask me, I didn't put it up. So Jones accepts the challenge. He vows to make Big Mama a bald-headed geek. Vows that Manny Fernandez would be there to see it. And somewhere in here, as he's ranting and raving, he called Jimmy Valiant a stupid idiot.
He did.
Now you know where Chris Jericho got it. I can only hope that Jericho's next line is bald-headed geek.
Hey, that may be
And he
next.
feuds with Cesaro's or something. Rick Rude and Baron Von Raschke and Shaska Whatley versus Brad Armstrong and the Kansas Jayhawks. A lot of action. I'll admit, I went to the bathroom. I had to come back and catch the finish.
Hey, I paused it.
You did pause. It was not
You
long.
didn't miss much. But you know what? The first competitive match we've seen in 2 straight shows.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about this amazing finish.
I have 2 short comments about the match. It was short. 3. It was short. It was all action. And rarely will you see a disparity in physiques like that between Rick Rude and Bobby Jaggers. Now, the finish.
We have the Kansas Jayhawkers and Brad Armstrong against Shaska Whatley, Rick Rude, and the evil German, the Baron Von Raschke. So Baron goes for the claw, but he misses, and he claws the canvas. Rude then goes to stomp on him, but the opponent moves, and Rude stomps on the Baron.
Mm-hmm.
The Baron is very angry. Armstrong then grabs the Baron from behind, sends him into Jones on the apron, knocks him to the floor, and does a reverse rolling cradle for the pin. Classic old-school babyface win over the Dastardly Heels.
Because the Dastardly Heels, part of the reason they're heels is they're bumbling fools.
But now the heels are mad. And they get into a big argument. And to make a long story short, that perhaps Vinny would like to go into more depth in, the Baron puts the claw on Paul Jones, and the place loses their shit over this German. Then the heels beat up the Baron, who took the worst bump I've ever seen for an elbow.
It was worse than the Bill Tab sit-down bump.
And then Wahoo makes the save for the German. And the other babyfaces come out. And it was amazing because the babyfaces that make the save, the Jayhawkers and Wahoo, and I think Brad Armstrong, they're all on one side of the ring. And the Baron is on the other side of the ring. The Baron has just turned on the heels, but he's still the Baron.
Still an evil German.
So the babyfaces, they make the save for the guy because there was an injustice being done. And so they made the save for the German. But that doesn't mean they're all buddies. And so they stand there, and they look at the German for a while, and then they kind of begrudgingly nod at him, and they all walk away. And the evil German Baron von Raschke is in the ring, and he turns, and he looks at the crowd, and he puts the claw high in the air, and they fucking go crazy again for the German. I couldn't even believe my eyes. This was awesome.
It was so great because, like you say, they weren't all of a sudden buddy-buddy.
No.
Not only was this an evil German, this is an evil German with whom they had done battle over and over again.
Sure.
So they had a tense stare down from across the ring, the German and this group of Americans. And there was like the slightest, most subtle nod, as if to say, I do not like you, Baron, but we are at a truce. And I will stay out of your way.
And we hate that Paul Jones, too.
We hate him more than we hate you. And so they all left, and the Baron put up the claw, and the fans all loved him. Because they hate Paul Jones so much, they'll cheer anyone who wants to fight him.
They went so crazy when he put that claw on Paul Jones. It's awesome.
The Rock and Roll Express came out for a promo. Now, I've had a lot to say about guys not looking like stars. Well, like when Kevin Owens was doing a match, and he came out for a promo in a tracksuit and t-shirt. That's not a good example because Kevin Owens is part of his gimmick is that he's just a guy. But guys who don't put a lot of effort in their look in general, and they don't look like stars, or they don't look intimidating or whatever. Ricky Morton, one half of the World Tag Team Champions, came out here to get a promo on national television wearing a faded Mickey Mouse sweatshirt.
Yeah.
That's all I got out of this.
There was nothing to get out of it. Robert said something. I couldn't get through the mumbling. Mickey Mouse cut a promo. Hey, they're baby faces for the teeny boppers in their training underwear.
I guess.
What the hell more do you want?
I don't know. Midnight Express pinned Alan West and Eddie Roberts in seriously 5 seconds.
And that was the end.
And Bubba hit a top rope splash, and Cornette was out there doing a Sherlock Holmes gimmick, trying to find the Road Warriors. I seriously spent more time talking about that match than it took, and that was that.
That was quite a show.
That was something else.
Thank God we watched that one. I'll never forget Jimmy Valiant and Big Mama.
No.
As long as I live. I only watched it one time. I have a feeling I will vividly remember it in 30 years. Check it out, everybody. It will not be hard to find on the internet. Have you found it already? Is it up there?
I have not found the video, but I have found
Really?
it. Well, I spent less time looking for it than the Midnight Express spent winning that tag match.
What the hell do you need to go on the internet for? It's on the network, for crying out loud. 30 years ago this week, NWA World Championship Wrestling.
Well, the unedited, the original music version.
That's what you were looking for. That's right.
But I have found the most amazing photo of Jimmy Valiant, David Crockett, and Big Mama that there could ever be.
I think Jimmy Valiant and Big Mama were together for a while.
I'm sure they were.
Yeah. And then apparently he didn't put her in his book, and she was upset about that.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyway, everybody.
You're gonna be mine all night long.
So the first show we watched, October 25th, 1986, opened with this footage shot from a moving car. Someone was in the passenger seat holding a camera. We couldn't see anyone in the car, but we could hear voices. And then this car and the car that was in front of it pulled into a parking lot, and they spotted Dusty Rhodes coming out of a third car, and they jumped out. And I thought, oh man, it's this angle. And I got really excited.
I think we've seen this before.
I haven't seen it before. You and I probably reviewed it at some point in the past 10 plus years. But,
yeah, I seem to recall that we reviewed it at some point, but this was the parking lot angle. And somebody had mentioned this on the board, but it's true. This was a couple of weeks after Magnum's car wreck.
Yes.
And so, quite frankly, it was amazing that they shot an angle that started essentially kind of with a car chase. It wasn't really a car chase, but it was enough of a car chase to kind of be a little bit uncomfortable.
There was a car following a car that's following another car. To be fair, the people in the third car were saying, take it easy, guys, don't get too close. So this is not Bret Hart being asked to do stunt driving or anything like that. But
No.
no. All right, so the announcers opened the show. They were very giddy. They had a report that Magnum TA was doing very well, and Jimmy will be on later with a full report.
Oh my God, it was David Crockett, and David Crockett is so excited, and he's so positive. Magnum TA's doing great. He's doing all right, and we're all excited, and everything's great. I'm like, dude, the guy's still in the hospital, and he never wrestles again.
No.
So where were you getting your information, buddy?
To be fair, I believe just the fact that Magnum was breathing in and out was good news.
Well, I mean, it was good news, but he was talking about it like, hey, this guy's going to be back here on NWA at any time.
They did hint he may return later, which of course was bullshit. Oh, maybe they didn't know it then, I don't know. So they plugged another Starrcade announcement for later in the show. Then Brad Armstrong joined them and said he had been watching Starrcade for years. Now he was excited to be a part of it. What part of it, you may ask? Nobody knows.
We knew at the end of the second show.
He did not have a match signed, but he had a contract just in case anyone wasn't busy and wanted to wrestle him.
Got the most generic babyface promo you've ever heard. He said he was here in the World Championship area.
Yeah. Yes. Let's see. Tim Horner and Brad Armstrong, whose names I forgot to write down, versus Bill Tabb and Brody Chase. I was very impressed that Bill Tabb had Big Bill on the legs of his tights, and also impressed by the Fu Manchu mustache and mullet combo on Brody Chase.
What I was amazed by was they managed to find a guy in Tim Horner that was even more generic than Brad Armstrong.
Oh, totally.
And I think he may have been sleeping through this entire match.
No, when you put the two of them together, Brad Armstrong is absolutely the Mr. Electricity guy.
Oh, yeah.
Tim Horner is the man. He may have been a mannequin doing wrestling moves.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Vinny, but have we not seen Teddy Long refereeing many times here on this program?
Probably. We've definitely seen him as the ring attendant guy, helping with taking jackets and robes and things.
Well, he was the referee here, and suffice to say, Bill Tabb and Brody Chase did not win. But when Brad Armstrong and Tim Horner did their double team into the side Russian leg sweep, he drops down to count Teddy Long, and he lays on his stomach and he goes, 1, 2, 3. Like he'd never refereed in his life. Just the weirdest, most mechanical fast count you've ever seen. I couldn't figure out what the hell was going on.
Well, I don't know. Maybe he was a heel ref. Maybe Tim Horner and Brad Armstrong bribed him to count quickly.
Whatever happened, it sucked.
I don't know, but you were right. Oh my God, Jimmy Valiant. Jimmy Valiant comes out for a promo, and when I say that, I must break this down in detail.
Well, I think we can cut to the chase. You can break it down in detail, but suffice to say, after last week, Boogie is back in a good mood again.
Oh, that's for sure. That's for damn sure. He boogies out on camera. He is so excited that before he can say a single word, he must do not 1, not 2, but 3 double fist pumps.
Yep.
He vows that Paul Jones would be a bald-headed geek, so he loved Big Mama more than life. He would die for her, he would kill for her, and Paul Jones would be a bald-headed geek. Then he said, all right, clap, all right, clap, all right, clap.
Now, maybe some of the historians can help me out with this, but we've been watching these NWA shows on and off for a couple of years now, if I recall correctly. Where the hell did Big Mama come from? Like, has she been around on other shows, or have there been angles that we missed? Because, granted, we have not seen every show, but watching this as a fan, she totally came out of nowhere It is now like the Boogie Woogie Man's main squeeze. Am I missing something?
Somebody sent me a link to a promo, and I'm not sure when it happened, but it was Boogie Woogie saying that he was feeling low because Dusty was feeling low. And so he had done Dusty a favor. And then we got a vignette of Boogie Woogie in his car picking up Big Mama as she walked the streets. And then she delivered a Big Mama to Dusty and said, I hope this cheers you up.
Well...
And Dusty said, I'm going to take this woman and buy her some drinks.
That's quite an angle here in 1986.
Yes.
Well, she did pull up. He was on the side of the road. He was on the streets when he ran into Big Mama again, so...
Yeah. I have a feeling, based on watching these two things and watching her here and watching her and whatever this other clip was, but it seems like every once in a while they just brought her back.
Sure.
And she'd come in and do a few shows, then she'd just fade away. But every time she came back in, it was like she was brand new. It's not like she was making her return. There's a brand new character every time. Jimmy Garvin versus John Savage. Now, Brian, watching these shows, you've many times questioned the gear of Ole Anderson.
Are you going to talk about Gorgeous Jimmy?
No, actually, I'm not.
Really?
I'm talking about John Savage.
Well, let me talk about Gorgeous Jimmy first.
All right.
How many times has Ric Flair come out and when Ric Flair talks about his custom-made suits and his Rolex watch and his big diamond rings, I mean, never once have I watched it and thought, that's actually probably cubic zirconium or whatever the hell it's called. I mean, I believe this dude spent all this money on this stuff. Well, Jimmy Garvin comes out, and his gear is so low rent. It looks like they went to the costume store and spent about $8 on whatever he's going to wear to the ring. I think that's part of his charm.
It is totally part of his charm. I see your point. He came out and he had the sequined suspenders and pants, and he takes the suspenders off, and I expected him to take the pants off as well and wrestle in his usual wrestling trunks. No, he wrestled in the sequined pants. I can only imagine where the sequins, they couldn't have lasted long. But no, I want to talk about John Savage. We've mentioned many times the jobbers of the NWA in the 1980s clearly had no ambition. They never worked out. They never tanned. They bought the cheapest, fakest, plain black trunks and white boots, and they hit the ring and wrestled for 2 minutes and lost and called it good.
I must stop you. I think that it is not that they have no ambition. I think they just have got no clue. I think they just don't get it.
Well, call it what you will. The point is, John Savage is not in that group. Because John Savage went out and bought himself some seafoam green trunks. He put them on, he had a bit of a body, and he looked good in these trunks, and he said, you know what these need? This needs something. Does it need stars? No, it doesn't need stars. Does it need like a lightning bolt? No, lightning bolt. I know, John Savage thought to himself, I know what I'll do. I'm going to get a loose flap of blue fabric, hang it in the front so it hangs over my penis. Get another loose flap of blue fabric, hang it in the back so it hangs over my ass, and then on these blue flaps, I will decorate them with flowers.
Yeah.
And then he went on national television in this outfit. And he got pinned with a brainbuster in seconds.
Well, Vinny, if you're going to create an outfit like that, you damn sure better be on national television. That's all I got to say.
I have never seen gear like this before or since.
I got to say, this brainbuster, he brain busted him right on his thigh.
Yes.
You know what Jimmy Garvin reminded me of here today? You'll never guess.
Well, then I won't try.
Mongo.
You were right.
Because he's a guy who is really not all that good a worker, but he has got a potentially disastrous finishing move. Right?
I would take Jimmy Garvin's brainbuster before we take Mongo's tombstone.
I would normally say you're right, but I have not seen Mongo screw up one tombstone.
Well, that's true.
He is a big, strong man.
There was one of these. I forget if it was this show or the other one, but they showed the Brainbuster in super slow-mo, and the guy's head did not go within 6 inches of the mat.
Well, that was kind of this one, too.
Yeah. So, let's see. Anyway, yeah, that ended. Jim Crockett came out to make a speech on behalf of Magnum TA and his family. Okay, things that have changed in wrestling. Obviously, this is a legit car wreck, and everyone knew it. And they knew it was bad news. So when he comes out to talk, the fans don't just go quiet. You can actually hear them shushing each other. They had to hear what Jim Crockett had to say about Magnum. So Jim Crockett's first update was, please stop calling the hospital. Because the hospital is getting overwhelmed with phone calls about the fate of Magnum TA, and I'm sure that was legit.
Oh, yeah.
He had an address where you could send cards. And he said, hopefully, he'll be able to come back from these injuries. And that was the whole update.
Yeah, he said, don't call the hospital, but here's the address of the hospital, so now everyone knows what hospital he's in, so it probably increased the number of phone calls.
It may have backfired that way, yeah. What did they think was going to happen? They call Charlotte Memorial, or whatever it is, and just say, may I speak to Magnum TA, please?
Hey, yes, that is what they expected.
What room is he in? I'd like to come see him.
You see, Vinny, he's an American hero. He's a superstar. He's a relatable character. Of course they would just call and talk to him.
Huh.
Or you know what?
Well,
Maybe they weren't calling to talk to him. Maybe they were calling the hospital to get an update. Like, how is he?
I guess so. So it's time for the Starrcade Control Center.
Oh, my God.
Before we get into what happened here, let's just talk about what this was. This was Control Center. This implies there's been an unplanned event or disaster, and they have set up a media or just a headquarters to try to get this under control.
Well, you don't necessarily need a disaster. I mean, this was the headquarters for the biggest show of the year for the National Wrestling Alliance.
So it's Tony Schiavone in the studio thing somewhere, and there's about 18 TVs behind him. And highlights of everyone from around the world is on these TVs.
Including Abdullah the Butcher.
Yes.
They're monitoring. This was like the Kremlin. This was like NASA. They're monitoring all of the wrestling all over the world here in the control center for the National Wrestling Alliance.
Yes, we have visual confirmation that Abdullah the Butcher is in fact working in Puerto Rico right this second. It's like a Lot Ness sighting. They're keeping tabs on everyone. They need to bring this back right now.
Dude, you want to know why they should bring this back right now? Because Tony Schiavone was so excited for Starrcade. He could not contain his excitement. Unlike all of these random robots that are running the show in WWE backstage in 2016, this was a guy where, as he is explaining all of the matches coming up at Starrcade, you believe that Tony Schiavone cannot wait for this show. It's the biggest moment of his year.
So the first thing I talked about was the Road Warriors. The Road Warriors have been injured by the Midnight Express, but they were training for their comeback. So they were lifting thousands of pounds of weights in the gym.
I had benching and rows and curls and more benching and more curls. It was so amazing. In 1986, when you were going to get ready to have a fight, you went to the weight room.
Of course.
That's how you got. And then, better yet, there was a spot where I think it was Animal. I could be wrong. One of them was doing bent over rows, and the other one was delivering hard forearms to his low back.
Exactly. This is how you learn to take a beating.
What the hell was that?
This is how you get to be a Road Warrior, Brian. That's why they were the Road Warriors and you're not.
This was amazing.
This is awesome.
And it got better.
It got better. They promised they had a surprise for Jim Cornette and the Midnights. They briefly went back to Schiavone, who said, here's the surprise. And the surprise was the Road Warriors, now in their face paint, and Paul Ellering, they were on the streets of Chicago. They had a pumpkin that was labeled Mama's Boy. And they were at a construction site, and they said, these construction workers up on these scaffolds, they're risking their lives every day living so close to the sky. And in tribute to them, we're calling this challenge the Night of the Skywalkers. And they climbed a couple of stories up a scaffold.
Well, they started climbing, and they looked scared to death. And then they cut away, and when they come back, they're already on the scaffold.
Yes. And they had pumpkins labeled Loverboy and Bobby. And they threw the Loverboy pumpkin, and it fell off camera, and we never saw it again. And I don't know if the camera guy just forgot to follow it, or if it broke, but it wasn't very impressive, or what. But thank God they had another pumpkin.
I love when they threw it, and the moment it left their hands, it begins to fall in slow motion.
I don't know where I would have seen this. Maybe it was the commercial release of the Starcade show, because this is still before I was watching. But I have seen this with the original music, with Iron Man by Black Sabbath, and I can tell you it is much better with Iron Man by Black Sabbath. But yes, the pumpkin falls, and it falls, and it's like a camera cut, but it's still falling and falling. And this, by the way, this is 1986 slow motion, which is essentially, you see a still image for about a second, then a second later there's another still image. Repeat, repeat, repeat. It's not a very smooth cut. And finally the pumpkin hits the streets and explodes in an impressive manner.
It was like an atomic explosion.
So we go back to the control center where Shivani and Jim Crockett formally announced the scaffold match. And then the Crockett moves on to the hair match between Valiant and Jones. It says Manny Fernandez will be suspended in a cage above the ring for this match.
30 feet above the ring, he said.
He did say that.
What's with the height here on this show?
Well, I guess they had a tall arena and wanted to use all that space they were paying for. Finally, they said Tully Blanchard had challenged Dusty Rhodes to an unsanctioned, non-title First Blood match.
Oh, man.
You know what? I take that back. I don't think they said non-title. I imagine they said non-title. They said for the title on the next show.
Well, I mean, it's unsanctioned, so it can't be for a title.
You would think. We'll get to that. It's on the next show. So Shivani, back in the studio, Shivani and David Crockett are talking about Dusty's ongoing feud against the Horsemen.
David is nearly urinating with excitement.
We saw the full video tease in the opener. So we're in a car with an anonymous cameraman who's just some guy the Horsemen had paid off to film this. Also in the car is, I believe, J.J. Dillon driving. We never actually saw these people until they got out of the car. But it seemed like J.J. was driving and Tully Blanchard was in the back seat. And the car next to them was the Andersons. And they're waiting in the parking lot, and they see Dusty Rhodes drive by in his orange convertible. And sadly, it was a rainy day, so they couldn't have the top down. But Dusty drives by in his convertible. The Andersons pull out in their Lincoln Continental to drive after him, and Tully's car also follows. And like you say, it's not a choice, but they're not a chase, but they are driving down the road for a quarter mile or so.
Sure.
And they see Dusty drive into the back entrance to Crockett's office. And Dillon is sure to point out there's only one way in. We've got him. And Dusty parks his car, and the Andersons box him in with their Lincoln Continental, and they jump out and they start beating him with an axe handle. As soon as the Andersons, Dillon, and they're all beating him up, and Tully's still there on crutches with his leg in a brace, just cheering him on. And they pinned Dusty against a truck, and they tied off both his hands. So he was essentially crucified, hung there. And then Ole grabs the axe handle and says, I'll do it. And he rears back, and the camera's zooming in on Dusty's hand, and Dusty Rhodes shouts, "Make it good!" And then Ole swung the axe handle, and they edited out the impact, so I can't tell if he made it good or not. And then they cut back to Dusty, and they cut back to his hand, but now it was blurred out. There's a black spot on the screen. And then they said, we'll see you tomorrow night.
This is a pretty heavy angle for 1986.
This would be a heavy angle at any time, really. Jumping a guy in a parking lot and attacking his hand with an axe handle. So the story was...
I think that axe head wasn't on that thing.
That's actually a good point.
That would have made it good.
That would have made it really good. So the announcers explained here, when they said, see you tomorrow night, Dusty was booked for a tag match against Ole and JJ, and he needed to win this match to get a spot at Starcade.
Against Ole and JJ Dillon.
I'm not sure how this happened.
Who was in his gear.
Yeah.
No shirt.
But they actually they explained this last week. I forgot until right now. This was the match where it was supposed to be Ole and Tully, but Tully got hurt. And so Arn already had a match, and Flair was in Japan, so JJ had to step in.
That's right.
So they didn't say this, but I assume it was supposed to be Dusty and Magnum teaming up. And obviously Magnum was hurt. And so Dusty Rhodes comes out, and this is 86. There's no pyro. There's no entrance screen. There's not even a stage. There's just a slender aisle through the crowd. And out comes, with no music, Dusty Rhodes and the Russian Nightmare Nikita Koloff. And the place goes crazy. The Horsemen are beside themselves. Nikita immediately just grabs Ole, kicks his ass, tosses him out of the cage, then stands guard so he can't get back in. And this leaves Dusty free to take the new cast on his hand that the Horsemen essentially put there, beat JJ bloody with it, and pin him. Place went nuts.
This place went crazy when the evil Russian turned. And let me say something. This was no Seth Rollins, Alberto Del Rio half-ass babyface turn.
Oh, no.
Nikita came out, and in a split second, he went from a bad guy to the best good guy in the whole universe, the evil Russian. And he attacked the heels, and he teamed with the top babyface, and he beat up all the bad guys, and Dusty busts open J.J. Dillon. They cart his carcass out of there. Place is going crazy for this guy. It was so awesome. Brand new top babyface in one night.
Yes, and Tully's out there at ringside in his blue and gray plaid blazer. Flair is there screaming at Nikita, just screaming. And Nikita
Flair was playing Conor McGregor.
Well, yeah. Well,
he was yelling. He was yelling at the other way around. But yeah, he was yelling at the guy from the crowd, taunting him, saying, "You want a shot of my title?" He was being Ric Flair.
And Nikita climbs the ropes inside the cage and does the belt motion around his waist with his hand. Everyone knew what was going on. Everyone went crazy.
There was no slow build to Nikita's turn.
No.
There were no seeds that were planted.
No.
I mean, they explained it later, but it was just one day. He helped Dusty, and he was a babyface. And they went all the way with it here.
The announcers outright said nobody had seen this coming, but the superpowers had united. So here was the explanation. Dusty and Nikita took a seat in Bill Apter's studio. Dusty said, he talked about Magnum's car wreck. So the last 2 weeks have been very hard for him. But after that car wreck, he got a phone call from Nikita Koloff. And he and Nikita had talked for hours. And they didn't agree on everything. But they found a common bond on what they wanted out of life. And they agreed. Nikita was the greatest Russian athlete. And Dusty called him Nicky.
Nicky.
So Nikita explained he had been on a successful tour of Japan, winning match after match after match. He returned to the U.S., and that's when he heard about Magnum's accident.
Clearly, this was before the internet.
Well, yes, it was. Or cell phones. Or anything. He said in all their battles, he had learned to respect Magnum. And nobody was going to tell him what to do, not the Kremlin and not Uncle Ivan. So he had crossed the line. He was going to fight beside Dusty now instead of against him.
It was awesome.
Ole and Arn Anderson versus Randy Barber and Clement Fields.
There is nothing to say about this match.
It was joined in progress. They destroyed Fields' shoulder and tapped him out with an armbar. They replayed the address for Charlotte Memorial Hospital and again asked fans, please do not call. And irate Jim Cornette stormed out. Could not believe they had been booked in a scaffold match, which he said was the most dangerous match there could ever be.
Little did he know. He didn't freak out enough.
In his case, that is true. So it could be the end of your career, the end of everything. He vowed to take out Ellering before Thanksgiving and said they would not be climbing up on a scaffold. Raging Bull and Rick Rude very quickly beat Kent Glover and Alan Martin with the Rude Awakening DDT.
And Alan Martin still found a way to screw up the very first spot. Manny Fernandez whips him into the corner, and he waits for him to come out, and he doesn't. And so Manny walked over there, and he pummeled him, and then he tagged in Rude and was done.
And so Paul Jones and his men cut a promo saying that big money led to bigger stars. That's why Baron was...
Do not gloss over this. Paul Jones comes out and he goes, "You learn something every day. I learned that if you spend money, you get better talent." A revelation for Paul Jones here.
That's why he's number one, Paul Jones.
If you don't spend no money, if you actually pay out the ass for guys, you'll get better guys.
You get what you pay for.
And everybody likes to call him Wahoo McDaniels and not McDaniel. He trumped it by calling the man Wahoo Mac Daniels.
Even better.
He's so horrible, but I love him.
He warned Baron Von Raschke to stay out of his way. Called it the Rock and Roll Express, Wahoo McDaniel, Jimmy Valiant, and Big Mama, and said soon Valiant's going to wake up every morning, sit down at the breakfast table, eat his toasties, and look across the table at bald-headed Big Mama. Raging Bull made fun of Wahoo, warned him to stay out of their way, and Rude called out Wahoo, said, "You're a tough guy. You lasted 9 years in the NFL, but you didn't last 9 seconds in the ring with us."
You know, most radio hosts would have too much pride to say what I'm about to say, but I don't care. Rude starts cutting his promo, and I'm sitting there thinking, who does this guy sound like? And I realized he sounded like Rick Rude, because we've been watching Rude cut promos in 1997. And then I realized it's the same guy. You moron.
I made that same comment once. I'm trying to remember who it was. I think it's saying this Scott Steiner promo sounded like a Big Papa Pump promo.
Yeah.
Something like that.
What a shocker.
But I get it, though. I get what you mean. So they said their piece and they're done. Shivani's wrapping up the show and the music starts. And then Jones, I forget what he said, but something like, "And Ronnie Garvin, we got our eyes on you too."
He forgot his line.
So that was the end of that show.